Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit on the issue of empathy today. And empathy, I feel like, is severely lacking in our world. And not everybody, because you definitely come across people, and I work in retail, so I come across a lot of assholes, and they have no empathy whatsoever. They walk into the store and they start yelling as if you were the cause of their problem. They start yelling as if you can actually do something to fix the fact that they lost their checkbook and now they have a check that bounced because they canceled their checkbook. But of course they want to yell at you because they have no empathy, because they don't take a second to just be conscientious of maybe what other people are going through, and they sit there and they yell and they scream and they throw a fit like they're a 2-year-old having a tantrum. And that's what the way it comes off to me most of the time is just, oh, you're being unreasonable? You can't understand that I'm just a monkey pushing buttons on the other side of a computer screen? Okay, well, you're an asshole. That, or you're so sheltered from your life that no one's ever forced you to have any sort of, real suffering in your life. You're so high up on your fucking pedestal that you think that being forced to walk a mile in the rain because somebody charged you wrong for a gift card or something like that you could have waited a couple days to fix, mind you. Could have waited. You didn't have to walk through the snow. We live in a privileged time where you could have called the store and left a very angry message with one of the managers, and they would have made you promises of, hey, yeah, come back in and we'll get this solved, sort of thing. And you could have waited 2 days for the snow to melt, for the buses to come back around. You didn't have to walk that far in the rain. I understand the frustration and the anger, but you did that to yourself. That's another... I want to get into what empathy actually is, because I was about to go off on a tangent. But what empathy is not is sympathy. Sympathy is that, oh my god, I feel so bad for you. Oh, that's so sad. Oh, look at the puppy. I want to give all my money to it. No, that's not empathy. That's sympathy. And it's I wouldn't say useless, but it's more propagandistic, and it's more of a play on your emotions so we can get what you want. If I can get my feels via mirror neurons to spark off in your head, that means I can get money out of you. That means I can get influence out of you. That means I can manipulate you and propagandize you. That's why you can't ever fall for any of those sad puppy commercials. It's complete propaganda, the way that they lay those commercials out. They're just trying to pull on your heartstrings, and the more that they pull on your heartstrings, they know the more they can manipulate you. And that's the main thing that they're trying to do with sympathy. Anything that's sympathetic, it's really kind of just playing off of your emotions. And I'm not saying that there's not a proper time and place for sympathy, but the proper time and place for sympathy is between two people when there's no way empathy's gonna help, right? Empathy is this massively useful tool that a lot of people don't have. But sometimes it's not useful, right? Like if somebody has just lost their mother, the best thing you can do is to sit there and be sympathetic. Because they don't want to hear about how you lost your mom two years down 2 years before, so you know exactly how they're feeling. No. What they want is for you to go, oh shit, that sucks. Here, let me hold you, my feels. I'm gonna feel with ya. Like there's certain times when sympathy is actually very, very useful. It's like, there's nothing that can be done in this situation. Let me just hold you. That's sort of where I feel like sympathy should lie. Everything else You gotta actually think about it. You have to actually think about your actions in relation to other people, right? Like, so if sympathy's like mafeels, like empathy definitely has the mafeels portion of it, but then empathy takes it a little bit further, right? So teenagers are a good example of a lack of empathy because in general, the ability to understand what somebody else is going through and that sort of area of the brain doesn't develop until about 19 or 20, if that, and I can understand that because I don't think I was anywhere near as mature as I am now when I was 18, 17, 16. Like, I didn't have any idea of the world, and I think part of maybe that development of empathy is just an increase in experience in your own life experiences. Like, if you've worked retail before and you come across a person who was working retail, you're going to be a lot more like, I'm not going to be a bitch to them. Yeah, I'm not going to make their life more difficult because I've been in that situation. It impacts how you behave around people, and it's not in the prissy sort of, oh, mafeels, I feel bad for you sort of way. It's more like, shit, that job sucks, I'm not going to make their life more difficult. Yep. Well, hi, darling, I saw you just had a horrible customer. I've had those things happen to me, too. Let's make your day better, and let's have a nice conversation this time. I can't stand people like that, either. And I have great conversations with customers sometimes, where it's like, they walk up to me and they go, what the fuck was wrong with that person? And I just go, I don't know. I'm like, and they're like, I worked retail for like 5 years when I was young, like, I would never treat somebody like that. And it's like, yes. So I guess the thing is, empathy and experience are uniquely attached. And so you have to have a certain level of experience to have a certain level of empathy, right? Like, you have to go through some of your own shit first to really understand what it is to be in a suffering state. And you cannot just assume that your own suffering state is the same as any other. There's complete nuance in everybody's suffering state. And you also have to recognize that everybody does suffer in their own way, but that each person's suffering is going to be different based off of their own life experiences. And each person's life experiences are completely different. And so to have empathy and to have a good level of empathy takes a level of extraction, and I think probably IQ to actually achieve. Look, the man I'm with, he works so goddamn hard. He works so hard. It's astounding to me how hard this man works. He works more than 70 hours a week because, when it's all said and done, he's got travel time between the two jobs, which is terrible, and then he doesn't get any sleep, and he still sits there and he goes, well, I'm going to make sure I take my lunch at a specific time, and I'm only going to take a half-hour lunch, and I'm going to do this, this, and this, and it's all because I want to make sure that I don't make other people's jobs more difficult. He's sitting there, killing himself, for a stupid reason, by the way. His ex got him in a shit ton of debt, which I'm pissed about. It's like, what the fuck is wrong with you? That you would have such a lack of empathy. That you would put a person $10,000 into debt for a fucking vacation that you wanted to take. What type of person is possessed to do that sort of shit? Other than a malevolent, like, it's the opposite of empathy. If you want to try to make somebody's life better, like, it takes a whole nother level of conscientiousness to try to find ways to fucking destroy them, which I believe is what has happened to the man I'm with. He is faced a serious spiritual war against his soul, and it's still eating at him because he refuses to quit his second job and just take a fucking break. And so you can see why I'm fucking angry about about him being in so much debt because of his stupid ex, who was a fucking malevolent bitch. And so, you know, I look at him in the way, how conscientious and just, and that's a form of empathy that you know, like, you have to think about it. You have to abstract to it. And you have to pull off of your own experiences at the same time. And I'm not talking about, like, experiences like, oh, I've been so oppressed all my life. I'm luck. No, that's not, no. Like, real fucking experiences. Like, my mom fucking died last month, and I am in debt, and I'm not gonna be able to pass my final. And my sister's not talking to me, and my brother hates my guts because, for whatever reason, you know, like, that's the type of shit where it's like, oh, you're suffering really bad? Wow, I've been there before. You want to talk about it? I can just sit and listen. I don't even have to say anything, because I don't think my sympathy's going to do shit for you. But I can listen to what you have to say and maybe give you some thoughts and try to help you through. Empathy is also, like, incredibly connected to love. And I don't mean love like in the frilly sort of Valentine's Day sort of romance sort of love. No. I mean love as in, like, there's different forms of love that, like, Christian scholars have talked about throughout the world. But you can break love up into, I like the triangle view of love, which is basically you have what would be like an affinity for each other would be one portion of the triangle. So to be like friends, like I like you, you like me, we have a friendship sort of attraction to each other. So that's one form of love. And another form of love has to do with commitment. Okay, I'm making a commitment to this. This is a choice, this is a commitment, this is a type of love. That is a type of love. Love is often a choice, it's an action. And then the third type of love gets them more into romance and passion. And so I would say, like, duty-bound love, love by choice, and then passionate love would be the three different types. And then, you know, Christians, I think they talk about, like, agape love, which is the love of God or something like that. It's supposed to be more of a pure sort of love and all sorts of things. But the point with love is that love is often a choice. And, you know, we don't often get to choose the people that we love. Like, I have commitments to my sister, who is actually a decent person, but we don't get along. You know, like, there are things in our past, like, we get along so much better now that she's had a baby and she's got a husband and she's toned down and she's less horrible than she used to be. Although I do think she did tell my parents about my engagement before I got a chance to tell them, which I'm, you know, that's her. That's her. But, like, that affinity, that affection sort of love part where it's like, yeah, we're best friends. Like, we really had to work at that. You know what I mean? Like, and it doesn't come easy. But I still say that I love her, and I still do things for her. Like, when she had her baby, she was not doing well because it was a really rough delivery. So I was over there a lot because I could be, because my schedule allowed for it at the time. And, you know, I helped her a lot to take care of that baby because I loved her. And I love that baby, and I love that family. And I wasn't gonna sit there and let my sister suffer when I could do something about it. You know, and like, she was still suffering, of course, but, you know, it could have been so much worse if I hadn't come over and spent the night and let her get her sleep so that she didn't have to keep bleeding over and over again because she kept moving around too much because she had to take care of the baby. You know what I mean? Like, I could have just had sympathy for her and been like, oh my god, sissy, that sounds so terrible. Like, I'm gonna go do my own thing, but like, yeah, okay. Like, go have fun with that. Like, that's how I view sympathy. Like, empathy is like, oh my god, sis, you're bleeding. Like, let me go change the baby's diaper. Let me go make you some food. Let me go do any number of things to make your day easier, because I see how much suffering you're going through right now, and I want to make that suffering less upon you. That's what empathy is like, you know? And just like with love, sometimes empathy's harsh. And sometimes empathy is, boy, you better fucking make that bed. Sometimes empathy is, boy, you better not get home past midnight with my young daughter. Otherwise, you will be dead. And sometimes empathy is, alright, you're going to rehab because this is not going to end up well for your life. And we're going to force you to do something you don't fucking want to do because we know that this is going to be better for you. That's love. That's empathy. Thinking for a moment, how will this person's behavior and actions impact their life? And maybe reaching out and going, stop. That could hurt you. That's empathy. Going, stop. Think about the risks. Think about the pain. Think about the suffering. That's empathy. And then being willing to take on some of that suffering for somebody else who is suffering, maybe for no fault of their own. That's a really, really intense form of empathy. You know? To take on the suffering of somebody else, to take on the responsibility of somebody else's, you know, bullshit that you didn't cause. That's deep, man. That's important. It's a really good thing to do. And, you know, there's not enough of that out in the world. Even if there was more of it out in the world, I'd still say there's not enough, because quite frankly, there's too many selfish people in the world. Too many people caught up with, you know, the way things look instead of the way that things are. You know, like my future husband's ex, she apparently didn't care about actually doing things. Like, if I go to the beach, I want to go to the beach. I want to go have fun. I want to go play in the water, in the sand, and build a sand castle and go poke at poor innocent sea creatures who, you know, you look at them. You don't poke them, okay? Leave the sea creatures alone. But the whole point is I want to go do things, go see things, go explore things. Whereas, I guess with his ex, she would, like, show up at the beach, want to take, like, 2 or 3 pictures, and then, like, leave. So she didn't actually want to have any experiences for herself. She just completely rejected the beauty of the world because she was more focused on what the appearance of her life was than her actual life. And as a result, she was a miserable, horrible, wretched human being. And she still is, as far as I know. And I don't say this out of just, you know, I only get to hear one side of the story and I know that. But some of the things that I've heard and how sincere this man is that I'm with, I cannot imagine for the life of me that he would be lying about the type of abuses she put him through. And I see how hard he works now, and I just can't imagine that he'd be doing that by choice, you know? It's not his choice to have to finish this out, to have to do this. Like, and I can't fix it for him. Which is, like, one of the most frustrating things I think I have to go through right now, is not being able to fix his problems for him. Because I see how much he's suffering. I see when he wakes up in the morning how tired he is. And when he comes home, he's exhausted. And when he gets up, he's exhausted. And when he goes back home, he's exhausted. And then he comes home on his weekend and he plays with his son all weekend long, even though he's exhausted. It's really hard. It's a really, really difficult thing to deal with sometimes, just watching him struggle so much, and I worry that it's just stress is going to kill him one day. He's already been through so much. And the saddest part is nobody he's ever been with has ever shown him any form of empathy at all. It was always about them. It was always about their pain, their suffering. And if you get so caught up in your own suffering and pain, you can't see other people. And if you can't see other people, you can't learn from other people. You can't be open to growing as an individual. You can't be open to new experiences. If you get so caught up in this just cycle of wretchedness and this, I like to call it a vortex of negativity, you can't see the light. You can't see what is divinely beautiful about the world. And the world is truly divinely beautiful. You just have to take a second to glance up at the sky. You have to take a second to look at the structure of a leaf. Notice the fractals that our world is made up of. Realize the complexity between your feet. Beneath your feet, like layers and layers of rocks that build up over millennia. It's astounding to think of all the things that came before us that had to happen to make us exist. All the evolution, the natural selection, the changing, and the rewriting of our DNA time and time again to get to this. It's astounding. But you see none of that. And you see none of that if you're just caught up in yourself. You see none of that if you can't take a second to turn from internal to external. You have to think about other people. Otherwise, you are a miserable wretch of a human being. And you're going to be miserable. And you're going to suffer more. People like other people who do things for them. There's a reason why my sister doesn't have any grounds when she tries to guilt trip me about not helping her enough. It's because I actually do help her enough. And she likes that, and that's why she keeps calling on me. And even though she disagrees with some of my life choices, she won't disown me because I'm an incredibly empathetic and useful person in her life. And she loves me, and I love her. And despite the fact that we hate each other sometimes and we don't get along, that's not going to change, and I'm going to try to keep showing her empathy as much as I can for the rest of my life. Because I honestly believe that what we put out into the universe is what we get back, and if we put out good, we're eventually going to get good back. My life is difficult. Sometimes I don't get enough sleep. Sometimes I go to bed at 9 o'clock, wake up at 1 o'clock, am awake for an hour, go back to sleep, have to wake up again at 4 a.m., wake for another couple hours, and I end up being exhausted throughout the day. But I have to do it anyway because otherwise he doesn't eat. He doesn't get his salad in the morning. He's too tired sometimes to wake up on his own, and I have to do it for him. It just makes me want to cry just thinking about how much he has to go through sometimes. And I can't do much to make it better. I can try. I can try to bear some of the suffering with him. I know I can't even begin to fathom the brute weight that is just on his shoulders right now. And sometimes part of empathy is recognizing when you can't know what another person's going through. The only thing you can do is see their suffering and be there for them. You know? But, at least with empathy, you can avoid that vortex of negativity. You can avoid that vortex that says, well, I cheated on this guy who I forced to knock me up because I couldn't figure out my birth control. But now he's the evil bastard because he doesn't want to be with me because I cheated on him with his best friend in the room beside his newborn sleeping daughter. Yeah, complete lack of fucking empathy. Conceiving a child to trap a man. Complete lack of empathy. It's just me. That's all I see from some women and from a lot of men out there, it's just me. That's all you get from them. You don't get empathy. You don't get, let's work together. I went over to my parents' house yesterday because I wanted to plant some part of my garden. And my dad's a good guy. He's empathetic and he's strong, and I go, okay, Dad, we gotta get this fence up. And he goes, okay, well, do we want the long fence or the short fence? And I go, well, we probably want the long fence. I bought a lot of seeds, and we sit there and we communicate and we talk to each other and we work together, and at the end of it we have a project done. The peas are planted, the rest of the garden is planted. They've paid me back $50 because I bought their plants for them this year. Do you know what happened in all of those interactions? Absolutely nothing negative. Nothing negative. We worked together. We completed goals together. They paid me back for the money that honestly, I thought about it. I was like, if I spend a little money on their garden and I ask for at least half back, I know Dad will give it to me because he's an empathetic fella who understands what it's like to be starting out in life. And knowing that $50 worth of plants is probably not exactly something that I can afford. And recognizing that I put, with my own hard labor, those plants into his land, and that he gets to share in the fruits of those labors. He knows all this. That's why he paid me back for the plants. And it's something he would have bought anyway. So I sat there, I was empathetic, I was like, the man's gonna pay me back. Plus, it's going to be something that he doesn't have to do. There's a lot of things he's not going to have to put labor into, but he's got more than enough money, coming in through in his older age to more than pay me back and not have to worry about any sort of money. And so, when you have true empathy in a relationship with somebody, both people are thinking about the other person and what their situation in life is, and whose responsibility it should be to take on certain burdens. Like, I'm young and youthful, and I don't have a shit ton wrong with me, and I have weekends free and stuff like that, and so I like going over to my parents' house, and I like enjoying my time playing in the dirt and building something and growing plants, and he knows that I like doing that. And he knows that if I do that, he can be more lazy and he can work on other projects. And like, he built himself a gazebo out on his back deck this last weekend. So it's all give and take. And I mean, I just think about this last weekend at my parents' house and just the way that, you know, two people can work together and what it's like when people have real empathy for each other in multiple different levels. And it just ends up resulting in a really positive, peaceful, loving experience. And that's what you want out of life, right? You don't want to have to fight with your spouse. Why fight with your spouse when you two can have a conversation and figure out how the other person is feeling and where the gaps are in responsibility? Because I'm not good at everything that my spouse is good at, and you're not going to be good at everything your spouse is good at. I am so much more creative than Michael is. I'm so much more, I'm a better cook, you know, and I know that there's other things. There's definitely, he's really good at a lot of things. I'm having a hard time thinking of things, but there are definitely like things that I'm a lot better at than him. Like, and it's okay to have a balance between, you know, the different, you know, gender roles and or so to speak, or just different duties in partnerships. You know, if you have a wife who's really a go-getter and you're more laid back and stuff, maybe she's the one that you put in the forefront when you meet a new couple or something, or have a new situation, for instance. Like Mike's a very quiet guy, like, you know, and I would never assume for him to be the leader in a social situation because of how quiet he is. And I can totally empathize with that and understand that, because my mother's the same way. And at the same time, I'm a lot more like my dad, where I can just go, hey, what's going on? How are you doing today? And I've learned that through a lot of time of watching my dad and learning from him. And that's the other thing. Empathy, and I think maybe I'll end this video on this note. Empathy is a learning process. You don't have empathy just like that. It's a growing process where you have to consistently think about what other people are actually going through to learn how to be empathetic. And then the completion of empathy, the I would think like probably one of the higher levels of morality in terms of empathy would be to take that empathy and to act upon that empathy and to actually do something to relieve the burden of somebody else. And so you have to first learn how to empathize with somebody, how to recognize their suffering, recognize where that suffering's coming from, maybe recognize how they were the cause of their own suffering, or because I gotta tell you, with my own man, like, I have a lot of empathy for him, but I also recognize as part of that empathy that some of it's his fault. And while I sympathize with his suffering, and I don't like it, and I want him to stop suffering, I also recognize that it is completely his choice, the amount of suffering he's currently going through, because he could quit his job, his second job. Not his first one, but his second job. He could definitely quit that one and just be done with the suffering and take a break for right now. You know, like, he could do that. So I'm perfectly cognizant of the fact that he's causing some of this suffering for himself. But even so, I have enough empathy to go, well, how can I make his life better? So recognize suffering, understand where that suffering is coming from, whether it is from within that person as a choice that person is making, or external forces. Like, my ex did not choose for his sorry, wrong choice. My current man did not choose for his ex. I have a hard time getting all the words out in the right order. He didn't choose for her to screw him over like that. $10,000 worth of debt on credit card, emptying out his bank accounts, just really shitty things that she did. And, some of that definitely is for him to blame. He probably shouldn't have been hanging out with her after the point where she knew she was pretty bitchy, but, we all make mistakes. And that's part of empathy too, is understanding that people are not perfect. People are not gods. They're not angels. They're not these immortal spiritual beings. You kind of have to work your way up to that. You don't get there just overnight now. But they're imperfect. And they can't be perfect, because they're attached to these mortal and frail bodies that lead them to down paths and temptation. That's why you have to be stronger than your body. You have to learn how to be conscientious, and you have to learn how to act when you see suffering in other people. And in that way, we can build more beauty in the world. We can do anything. But you have to learn how to act on other people's suffering. And not just that bullshit SJW sort of, oh, the poor suffering oppressed people. No, like real action. Like I wake up at 4 a.m. to make him a salad so that he can get ready and he doesn't have to do that. That's what I mean, real action. So there were like 2 different school shootings, like a couple weeks in a row. The first one, and there's been so many, I don't mean to smile at that, by the way. It's not a good thing to have school shootings, but there's been so many that I cannot remember specifically the location of each of these, but the most recent ones, where you got the first round one, where it was the big one where a bunch of kids got shot, and the kid who was doing the shooting had like fetal alcohol syndrome and was a foster care kid who had probably been severely neglected most of his life. That kid was like, I'm gonna be a school mass shooter, and nobody did shit about it. And I mean, there was a real lack of empathy and action on the part of that kid. So you see, on one hand, what a lack of empathy leads to, which is a mass school shooting that kills, probably a dozen people, or whatever the number was. I can't exactly remember. I do remember it was a tragedy, and that there was a police officer, or a few police officers outside of the school who could have gone into the school and shot the man down, but they didn't fucking do it. And then you have the second school shooting come up, and you have the man outside of the school with the gun actually run into the school with the gun and start exchanging fire with the school shooter. And then from what I remember, the only person who died in that situation was the school shooter. And I don't even remember if the school shooter himself died. Like, there were the casualty list in the second school shooting, because the person have enough empathy to think, well, this is gonna cause a lot of suffering and pain, I better go fucking do something about it. So, yeah, it's a learning experience, unfortunately. And, some situations you can clearly see, where empathy was definitely employed and where it's not employed, and how tragic it can be when you don't act. And so, as you go through your life, I would suggest just thinking about other people, turning from the internal, oh, woe is me, sort of, I've got pain and suffering in my life, and turn it more outward to, how can I make other people's lives better? Because I'm going to tell you what's going to happen to you if you do this. Have lots of old ladies going, oh my god, she's so sweet, look at her, she's just helping me with my groceries. Oh, what a sweetheart. And then you start to think to yourself, I might be just a little sweet. Maybe just a little. And then you keep hearing it over and over again. And then you keep hearing, oh, she's such a hard worker. Oh, she just do so well. Oh, look at Courtney. She's the best. And you start hearing that over and over again, and you start thinking to yourself, why do I have a vortex of negativity inside my heart? What the fuck is the point to that? That seems stupid. And then you just go, you pick it up and you go, poing! And it goes way out there. Goes way out. Never see it again. And you just have to keep that up. It's a work. But it's a happier life. Because you show sympathy to other... Not sympathy, but empathy to other people. And they'll show empathy to you. It's the way karma works.